You discover the world beneath the ocean on a night when the sea is completely still. You had been sailing alone for several days when the wind finally disappeared. The sails hung motionless above you. The waves became almost perfectly flat, and the ship seemed to be floating on a sheet of dark glass. There was something strangely peaceful about it. You stood at the railing and looked across the endless ocean. The sky above you was clear, filled with more stars than you had ever seen. Their reflections stretched across the surface of the water, making it difficult to tell where the sky ended and the sea began. You had been watching the stars for several minutes and you noticed something below you. A light. It was faint at first, a small blue glow, moving beneath the surface. You leaned over the railing. The light disappeared. You waited. Then it appeared again. This time closer. You could see another one beside it. And another. Within moments, dozens of tiny blue lights were moving beneath your ship. You had never seen anything like it. The ocean seemed to be filled with stars. You leaned farther over the railing, trying to see through the darkness. Then something enormous moved beneath the ship. You stepped backward. The water remained completely calm. Whatever had passed beneath you had made no waves. You stood there for a moment, listening to the silence. Then you heard a sound, a low, distant hum that seemed to come from beneath the water. The lights began moving faster. They gathered directly beneath your ship. Then one by one, they disappeared. The ocean became completely dark again. You waited, but nothing happened. Eventually, you decided you would imagine it. You turned toward the cabin. Then the ship moved. Not forward. Down. You grabbed the railing. The deck tilted beneath your feet. You looked over the railing. The water was climbing. But there were no waves. The entire sea seemed to be lifting the ship upward. Then you realised the truth. The ship wasn't moving down. The water was moving around it. A strange blue light appeared beneath the hull. The ship began descending, slowly at first and then faster. You held onto the railing as the surface of the ocean disappeared above you. Within seconds, you were underwater. But you could still breathe. You stared around in disbelief. The ship continued sinking, yet there was no water on the deck. A strange, invisible barrier surrounded the vessel, and the ocean passed around you like a wall of glass. Fish moved through the darkness, silver creatures with long fins and tiny glowing animals that looked like drifting stars. Far below, something enormous moved through the blue. You had never imagined the ocean could be this deep. You had never imagined it could be this beautiful. The deeper you went, the darker everything became. The moonlight disappeared. The stars disappeared. Only the blue glow remained. Then you saw something in the distance, a structure. At first you thought it was a mountain, but as the ship approached, you realised it was a tower, a huge stone tower, rising from the ocean floor. Its surface was covered with glowing symbols. You stared at it. The tower seemed ancient, older than anything you had ever seen. As your ship passed beside it, the symbols began to illuminate, one after another. The entire tower came alive. And then you saw them. Lights. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They stretched across the ocean floor. You couldn't understand what you were seeing. Then the darkness ahead began to brighten, and a city appeared. You stopped breathing. The city was enormous. Towers rose from the ocean floor, covered in glowing windows. Bridges curved between enormous buildings. Roads of pale blue light stretched through the water. Thousands of small lights moved between the structures. Above the city, floating among the water, were enormous transparent creatures that moved like whales. You watched them drift silently between the towers. It was a civilization, a world, hidden beneath the ocean. You had no idea it existed. Your ship continued toward the city. As you approached, you noticed that the buildings weren't made entirely from stone. Some appeared to have grown from enormous coral formations. Others looked like glass. Some were covered in plants that glowed softly in shades of blue and violet. The entire city seemed alive. Then something approached your ship. A person. They were swimming through the water without any equipment. They wore a long, flowing robe that moved gently behind them, and their hair floated around their shoulders. They stopped beside the ship and looked directly at you. You expected them to speak. Instead, you heard their voice inside your mind. Welcome. You looked around. There was nobody else on the deck. You looked back at them. Where am I? The figure smiled. Home. You didn't understand. I've never been here. The figure looked toward the city. Not yet. They touched the side of the ship. The invisible barrier around it changed, and the water suddenly became clear. You could see the city below in perfect detail. The figure pointed toward a large structure. In the centre, a massive dome, surrounded by glowing gardens. That is where you need to go. You looked at the building. Why? The figure smiled again. Because you have been dreaming about it for a very long time. You felt a strange chill. You had. You remembered the dreams. For years, you had dreamed about water. You dreamed about standing on the ocean floor. You dreamed about distant lights beneath the waves. You dreamed about a city you could never quite reach. You had always assumed they were meaningless dreams. Now you weren't so sure. The figure began swimming toward the city. You followed. Your ship moved silently behind you. As you entered the city, you began noticing the people. They walked along the glowing streets. Some were carrying strange objects. Some were talking. Children played near fountains, filled with floating lights. Nobody seemed surprised to see you. In fact, many of them smiled, as though they had been expecting you. You stepped off the ship. The moment your feet touched the glowing stone, something happened. The entire city became silent. Every light seemed to brighten. The figure who had greeted you approached. You've returned. You stared at them. I've never been here. The figure placed a hand against your shoulder. Not in this life. You didn't know what to say. They led you through the city. The buildings became taller. The streets became quieter. Eventually, you reached the great dome you had seen from above. Its doors opened automatically. Inside was a garden, an enormous garden. Trees grew beneath the water. Flowers floated through the air. Small streams of glowing water flowed between the roots. In the centre was a pool. The surface was perfectly still. You walked toward it. You looked down. Instead of your reflection, you saw a different place. A beach. A quiet beach beneath a purple sky. You recognized it immediately. It was from one of your dreams. You looked at the figure. What is this? The memory of your first visit. You stared into the water. The image changed. You saw yourself as a child, standing beside an ocean and looking into the waves. Then the image changed again. You were older, sitting on a boat and looking into the water. Then again, you were an adult, standing exactly where you had been the night before, watching the blue lights beneath your ship. You stepped backward. How long have you been watching me? The figure smiled. We haven't been watching you. They pointed toward the pool. You've been remembering us. The room became quiet. You looked at the water again. The image had disappeared. Only your reflection remained. For a long time, you said nothing. Then you asked the question that had been sitting in your mind since you first saw the city. Why is this place hidden? The figure looked toward the ceiling because the surface world forgot us. You looked up. Above the glass dome, enormous creatures moved through the dark water. Long ago, people from your world lived here. They built cities beneath the sea. They learned how to breathe the water. They learned how to speak to the creatures of the deep. They learned things that your world eventually forgot. The figure paused. Then the oceans changed. You looked toward the city. Why did they leave? They didn't. You frowned. The figure smiled. They simply stopped being visible. You looked through the dome. The city stretched into the distance. Thousands of lights and thousands of lives. Civilization hidden beneath the ocean. You suddenly realized that you could stay. The thought surprised you. You had spent years moving from place to place, always looking for somewhere that felt like home. And now you had found a place that had apparently been waiting for you. The figure seemed to understand. You You don't have to decide tonight. You looked at them. What happens if I leave? You return whenever you dream. You smiled. How? The figure pointed toward the pool. Close your eyes. You did. The sound of the ocean surrounded you. You could hear distant whales singing. You could hear water moving through the city. You could hear thousands of quiet voices. Then you heard something else. Your own heartbeat, slow, steady. You opened your eyes. You were standing on the deck of your ship. The ocean was calm. The sky was still filled with stars. You looked over the railing. There was nothing beneath the surface. No lights. No city. No tower. Just dark blue water. You looked at your hands. They were dry. You looked around the ship. Everything was exactly as you had left it. You wondered whether you had dreamed the entire thing. Then you noted something on the railing. A small blue shell. You picked it up. It was warm. You held it against your ear. And you heard the ocean, not the ordinary sound of waves. Something deeper. A distant hum. Almost like music. You smiled. You placed the shell in your pocket. Then you went below deck. The ship was quiet. You climbed into your bed. Outside, the ocean moved gently beneath the stars. You closed your eyes. And almost immediately, you were back there, standing beneath the ocean. The glowing city stretching before you. The enormous creatures drifting peacefully overhead. The lights of the underwater world shining through the blue darkness. You walked through the city. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. You simply followed the glowing road. Eventually, you reached a quiet balcony overlooking the ocean. You sat down. Above you, the surface of the water shimmered like a distant sky. Below you, the city glowed softly. You could hear the distant song of something enormous passing through the darkness. You leaned back. You watched the lights move through the water, and you realized something. The ocean had never been empty. It had simply been hiding a world you weren't ready to see. You closed your eyes. The water moved gently around you. The city continued glowing, and somewhere far above, beneath the moonlit surface, your ship drifted peacefully through the night. You slept, and beneath the ocean, the hidden world waited patiently for your next dream.